country diggers. Welcome to the Speakeasy. Today we're going into Over the Edge, Death in the Grand Canyon. It's by Michael P. Ghiglieri. I think my internet's down and I can't look up how to pronounce the word, the last name right here. It is Ghiglieri, okay, by Michael P. Ghiglieri, or however you say it, and Thomas M. Myers. Now, the last video I did on this, I forgot to mention the book and the author's names verbally, so I'm doing that now. I did write them down, though, in the description, but I forgot to say them verbally. But we'll be talking about another Grand Canyon Over the Edge mishap, okay? So stay tuned. Okay, last time we talked about Dee Dee Johnson. She just got too close to the edge and fell. And half a century later, at the same wall, fate played out a similar taboo. At midnight on May 11th, 1997, NPS Dispatch received a frantic call from the lobby of the Bright Angel Lodge. The caller, Clifton Reeder, reported an intoxicated woman walking atop the wall behind the lodge. She had insisted on going climbing. Alarmed, the dispatcher broadcast this same message over the park radio. Ranger Keith McAlfee responded first, hurrying into the lobby barely a minute after the dispatcher's alert. The lobby stood empty. McAlfee continued outside to the rear wall overlooking Grand Canyon. He found Reeder there standing in the dark and peering downward. Reeder turned to McAlfee while frantically gesturing into the dark abyss. "She is over the edge," he shouted. "You have to help her. McAlfee peered down to where Reeder pointed. All he could see were the branches of a tree vibrating in violent jerks. Then from the depths came a terrified and clearly feminine call, "Help me." Still seeing no one, McAlfee shifted his position and shined his maglite downward, sweeping towards the chasm. The beam revealed a woman wearing a light blue shirt and sitting precariously on a steep ledge 20 feet below him. McAlfee recognized her as Lana Virginia Smith, age 28. She was also from Mobile, Alabama, and moved to Arizona. McAlfee had met Smith at a neighbor's house. He knew her to be a local Grand Canyon Village resident and an employee of the Fred Harvey Company. Now, I'll be doing a series on the Harvey girls in a separate video. So stay tuned for that one too. "Don't move," McAlfee cautioned her. "I'll find a way to help you." Smith, McAlfee, now saw to his increasing alarm, seemed so upset and unstable that she had become an extreme danger to herself. Smith's perch stood only a very few dangerous feet above a sheer cliff. McAlfee inched across the wall for a better look. Yes, Smith's position looked sketchy in the extreme. McAlfee wrapped his brain for a safe plan to get a rope or a hand to her. The option of him descending the steep, unstable slope to her in the dark would be far too dangerous without the protection of a rope. As he feverishly scanned the treacherous terrain again for a safe route to Smith, she sobbed louder and cried out again for help. Smith seemed so distraught, McAlfee now realized that whatever he was going to do, he had better do it fast. As to underscore this urgency, Smith tried to shift her location. She slipped downward a few feet. Rocks and debris dislodged and tumbled into a long, silent free fall. His heart racing, McAlfee studied the terrain again and tried to calm Smith down with assurances as he meanwhile struggled to devise a plan to rescue her. "Don't move," he advised again. "Let me find a way to help you where you are." "I'm really scared," Smith gasped to McAlfee. "I want to get out of here." Now, less than 5 minutes later, McAlfee had rushed into the empty lobby of the Bright Angel Lodge. Ranger Donnie Miller joined him. Miller, too, knew Smith. The two rangers quickly agreed that Miller should assume the full-time role of talking to and calming Smith, while McAlfee formulated a plan to get to her with a rope before she tried to move again. Miller climbed over the wall and edged into the steep, eroding slope. He talked soothingly to Smith as he too scanned for a safe way to get a hold of her. McAlfee, meanwhile, radioed dispatch to immediately send technical rescue expert Ranger Michael Nash. He next radioed for Ranger Matt Van Derza to assist. Meanwhile, Reeder had become so distraught and unsafe near the edge that McAlfee had to order him away from the wall. Minutes of waiting now ticked by as McAlfee tried to review what they would need to do to reach Smith and bring her up without casualties. Meanwhile, Reeder explained to McAlfee why Smith had become such an emotional mess. At 12:30 a.m., Reeder said the bartender at the Bright Angel Lodge had refused to sell her another drink. Smith was feeling despondent over a child custody disagreement with her ex being switched in his visitation rights of the child from every other weekend to every other week. Pondering this, Smith had begun drinking heavily. The bartender had already served her three shots of Yukon Jack and 2 beers. But when he said no more, Smith had become agitated and headed for the wall. Her teetering above the cliff, while not being in her right mind, had seemed a disaster about to happen. Maybe McAlfee hoped Miller would calm her down enough that she will stay put until they could harness her into a rope. McAlfee heard a scream from beyond the wall. He rushed to peer down beyond Miller, himself now inching precariously downslope unprotected by rope. Smith had again tried to move, and again she had slipped and slid further towards the edge of the cliff. Both rangers' hearts skipped a beat. They were running out of time, running out fast. They knew it, and they still had no rope. Smith's situation now looked even worse. She lay on her back in the dark on the steep slope, now 50 feet above the wall, spreading her friction thin. She clutched loose, rattling gravel between her fingers. "Hold on, don't move," both men yelled to and at Smith. McAlfee thumbed his transmitter button and radioed to Nash to expedite. At 12:52 a.m., less than 15 minutes after McAlfee had awakened him from a dead sleep, Nash arrived with his technical gear. McAfee told Nash empathetically that they were running out of time and had to move fast. As Nash secured a high-strength anchor for a relay, the distraught woman lay half on her back and her side, and now gripped a small tree nudging the cliff. Her screams for help had merged into wailing. Ranger Mendoza had arrived a few minutes after Nash. He buckled himself into his rappelling harness and top roped himself from Nash's anchor. At 1:04 a.m., McAfee saw their sands of time dribbling to zero. He yelled at Nash to throw him a rope. McAfee caught Nash's rope, then tossed it to Miller, yelling at him to catch it and pass it down to Smith. "Catch this rope," Miller encouraged the now hysterical Smith as he yanked and gathered slack and then tossed it further. Instead of catching the rope, Smith screamed as she slid the last few feet to the precipice. Rocky debris rattled over the edge and hissed into thin air. This time, instead of stopping, Smith kept on sliding to and then over the edge. At the brink of disaster, Smith grabbed a stunted bush anchored to the thin soil. Miller dared risking a scramble down slope to her a few feet further, just as Ranger William Bowen had done for D.D. Johnson half a century earlier. But this time the slippery and steep terrain, far more treacherous in the darkness, stopped Miller several feet short of being able to grab Smith. Now she had slid partway over the edge to become almost invisible. Her wailing for help became unnerving. All that McAfee could see of Smith were her hands and head. She could not go beyond this location, he realized, and still survive. Her body now seemed to be dangling off the edge in a hideous cliffhanger. Screaming and frantically gripping that stunted bush with both hands for dear life, Smith could neither focus on the rope Miller had tossed to her, nor did she seem willing to risk letting go of that bush to grab anything else. Hang on, the Rangers yelled again. Smith continued screeching for help. Ranger Vanderza still had not yet fully harnessed, hurried over the wall towards Smith anyway. Abruptly, the other Rangers' stomachs sank as they saw Smith's last visible hand release the bush. The hand vanished. Smith called out, then screamed in terror, in a sinking Doppler effect. A few more rocks clattered downward and dropped off, then silence. Hoping for a 1 in a million last reprieve, McAfee shined the beam of his maglite along the edge of the drop-off. Still nothing. Smith had vanished. Hoping now for a true miracle, McAfee ordered Nash and Mendoza to execute an immediate, hasty rappel over the edge. Mendoza, still not fully harnessed, immediately rappelled downward over the cliff and to the end of his 150-foot rope. He then dangled in the dark and searched the cliff face. Smith, he soon realized, had fallen far beyond where he now dangled. Sickened by the realization that he and his 3 comrades had run out of time by mere seconds and run out of space by mere inches, he slowly ascended back up the wall. An hour and a half later, Vanderza and Nash had descended further and finally spotted Smith's lifeless body crumpled 230 feet below the edge. Alcohol and one of the world's most frightening drop-offs is a lethal combination whose tragic outcome few of us find surprising. How many other rim falls had alcohol as an accomplice is unfortunately impossible for us to determine due to incomplete data, but it seems a major player. Well, that's sad, and see you back soon. Bye.